Hey everyone, it's Raghu back with Mindrolling, and with me is Stephanie Karzon Abrams. And Stephanie is quite accomplished in many different areas that we're going to talk about, from psychedelics to uh, brain work. Stephanie has worked with people who have had brain injuries. I want to hear about that. And so it's very broad, and your interests, never mind the fact that you are part owner of a record label, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
So, anyhow, so one of the things I found out as I was just reading about Stephanie was she's from Montreal. Now, those of you who have listened to this podcast for years, which I've been doing it, know, of course, that I am from Montreal. And Stephanie, it is where my entire life changed one day when I was a program director of a radio station, CKGM.
Okay.
Okay, I don't think it exists. I'm not even sure. I was just back there. Uh, and it was there that somebody called and said, "Hey, can you help us promote Ram Dass? He's giving a lecture at McGill University." And I said, I don't know what a Ram Dass is, but, and she said, "Oh, Tim Leary, Richard Alpert." And I went, "Oh, okay. Love them. Send me a tape of whatever he does." And they did, and that was it. So that was the dividing line from the
Wow.
before to the after in that moment, because I trusted what he was saying. He was very trustworthy. And I, from there, went to India, and the rest is history after meeting Ram Dass's guru, my guru, named Karoli Baba. So that was Montreal. So as soon as I saw you were from Montreal, I'm like, okay. And you're really strong interest in music, which is what that was it for me. I was saved by music, okay, basically. And tell me your story of being a teenager. Did you grow up when you were a teenager in Montreal?
I was born and raised in Montreal, and left when I was 27, so 7 years ago. But definitely shaped by Montreal in so many different ways.
Yeah.
You agree, it's just a hub for culture, music, the arts, hospitality. Like, that's just really the beating heart of that city.
And the best bagels in the world, okay?
Best bagels in the world. New York, get out of here.
Yeah, exactly. I finally have someone who can support me in that way.
I got you. Yeah, I mean, growing up there was interesting. My parents are not from there. My parents were born in Egypt. They're Greek and Egyptian, and met in Montreal. So just growing up in, like a French Canadian city that's so multicultural, in my Egyptian and Greek home, I felt like I was just this product of, I guess, like international influence.
Mm.
Like you mentioned, music is source. I share that feeling with you. I grew up playing music, but I was also this person that had a really hard time choosing a route. Like, I loved the arts and I loved music, but I also loved sports and I loved science, and I just wanted to do it all. My parents often told me that I couldn't do it all, but yeah, I was doing it all all the time. And I feel like that pattern kind of repeated itself throughout school. Like, I wanted to work in science and in medicine, but I loved to write. And there was a brief moment where I wanted to blow up the whole science career and become a writer, and went into liberal arts for a brief moment and had a fantastic time. But then again, indecision, went back to health sciences. So, eventually I chose a route and ended up in pharmacology, neuropharmacology. But for me, you said that, Montreal is what changed you or shaped you. It laid a foundation for me, for sure, but it's when I moved to LA that things cracked open.
Mm.
I felt like I was seeing people just do it all. Like, people have different passions in different areas and pursue them as careers, and kind of gave me a hint that, hey, you don't just have to do one thing, and you can, if you can see it happening in front of you, it means you can figure it out. And then things just started to come together when I realized that, yeah, diverse passions and diverse career, and you can shape it the way you want to. So
Mm, mm.
that's that.
What about your relationship with, for me, and I'm generations ahead of you, I was having a really hard time with the culture.
In Montreal?
No, North America.
Oh, North America.
Yeah.
Okay.
The big picture of what we were supposed to become as a result of whatever schooling we had, whatever parental guidance we had. All of it was basically, I was a depressed, archetypical depressed teenager, right? And music, as I said, really did save me. I mean, back then, Dylan, to even hear, oh yeah, shit, somebody's saying what it is that, I'm living, and then, yeah, just to let you know, I mean, this is again an old story that I tell because it was so important to me. One day when I was like 17, 18 or something, I went to see John Coltrane in Montreal live with his quartet. And he played my favorite things on soprano saxophone. I don't know if I think you know who John Coltrane is, right?
I do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that song is a famous song written by like people like Hoagie Carmichael or something. And he played that, and I had an out-of-body experience. I mean, I just left the time and space that I came in with and went out for a little bit. And this was a huge event for me because it then led me to want to further go inside, search inside yourself. That became an important objective for me, no matter what I was doing. I mean, I loved music, and I ended up doing a lot in that area and still do. What about you in relation to who I mean, I think you grew up a happy kid just by virtue of this meeting. But, there must have been some questions about, what reality is.
Yeah, I grew up a happy kid, but I grew up asking like a lot of questions because I had a lot of experiences that felt, I don't want to say spiritual necessarily, but they felt out of this world. I felt, you said that you had an out of body experience when you listened to that song, to that music. I would have emotional responses to music that led me to believe in past lives. And when you're 12 years old and you're asking your parents about past lives and it's not quite part of their belief system,
yeah,
things get a little funny, right? I still believe that to this day because there are pieces of music that I'll have never heard before in my whole life. And I don't have a memory necessarily attached to it. And yet I find myself moved to tears. And that happens not just when I listen to music, it happens when I learn a new piece on the piano, I finally completed it. It just moves me. And it really does feel like I've existed in other times. And so, I've asked myself questions like that throughout my childhood. And I feel like it is only now in recent years when I discovered psychedelics, when I discovered that music itself is psychedelic, that dance can be psychedelic, that all these practices that don't even involve substances can be psychedelic. It's only now that I realize, what all of this kind of means. And I'm able to put it into, I guess, like perspective. And I look back at my entire life and things that confused me once as a child seem to make sense. And I don't think it's just, lived experience. I think it's just also, the people you meet and yeah, just education through life and experience. Yeah.
What was the You said you were 12 and this something happened. What was that?
Oh, this, I don't think I can quite recall what a
The
song
music
it
was, the
was.
song was?
I can't quite recall, but I will tell you something that actually, I don't know if it's this one when I was 12, but throughout my entire life, How Deep Is Your Love by the Bee Gees.
Mm-hmm.
No matter where I am, what I'm doing, if I hear it, it makes me cry. And I didn't grow up with this music, but my parents did. And my parents are big, fans of music, and they played a lot of music. And I feel like I got a lot of really cool musical influences from what they played. I think musical talent skipped a generation because my grandparents and my great aunts and uncles all musically talented, like singers and concert
Oh,
pianists.
really? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and then it skipped my parents, and then all three of us, myself and my two brothers,
Mm.
all uh all have some sort of musical talent. So it's really interesting. But
Oh, that's
I
fun.
mean, that song is an example, like why I didn't have some sort of experience with it as a child, not that I remember anyways. And I even thought, oh, did my mom play it in the womb and then it kind of like
Yeah, yeah.
reached me in some sort of way? But music from that time, the soul songs, Motown, I just feel like I must have lived in that time, something like
Yeah, really.
that.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
But tell us about let's talk about psychedelics a little bit. I
Yeah.
mean, that's also integral to your work. And yeah, how did that happen for you? What's your own experience there? And I know you have a lot of different work that you do around different substances related to, exploring relationships, intimacy, altered states of consciousness, and so on. So, yeah. So, how did that happen?
Yeah. So I studied neuropharmacology, finally made a decision on what I wanted to study. And I ended up working in the ICU for a little while, and my focus was traumatic
Really?
brain injuries, as you mentioned. Yeah, I was at the Sacré-Cœur, Hôpital du Sacré-Cœur. Do you remember that hospital?
The Allen Memorial?
No,
No,
the Sacré-Cœur Hospital in Montreal.
no.
No, it was a trauma level 1 center, so we got a lot of traumas, a lot of head injuries, and that was my focus. I worked with the pharmacy team, and I remember seeing people so disconnected from themselves due to their injury, like the personality changes, the psychological difficulties that would happen and kind of be a consequence of the head injury. And I would see just families devastated because their loved one just wasn't the same anymore, like
Wow.
I've even spoken to someone recently. Their husband went out for a bike ride, just a bike ride, was wearing a helmet, came back, did not come back because he had a biking accident, and he's a totally different person now. And she's grappling with this change. It's like without a warning, this human that you love is still there, but not, totally different person. And so it was very heavy, but it was also very inspiring in a sense because I saw that there was a need. I saw that the way we were tailoring these care plans were just not adequate. In the acute phase, the early stages of these injuries, you give a lot of mental health medications to help manage the symptoms, right? But then people end up staying on these mental health medications for years and sometimes a lifetime. And all they're doing is just this Band-Aid solution for these symptoms. And they're not really finding themselves and not really, addressing that core issue and reconnecting with who they once were. So that was kind of a light bulb moment for me, because when I wanted to dive back into this area of study, I thought, hey, there's got to be someone out there trying to apply psychedelic medicines and psychedelic therapies to this population. So that was kind of my first little inkling. Of course, I've had, my own psychedelic experiences that were very awakening and impactful and I'd be remiss to say that that didn't influence me, because it certainly did. And just being so fascinated about the mind-body connection, but not just that, like I said before, having this sense that there's something bigger than what we see in this world, perhaps past lives, perhaps a collective consciousness, all these kinds of questions that I've asked myself over the years were all kind of coming to this point of culmination when I started thinking, how can psychedelics help special populations, people who have suffered certain injuries or suffered certain disorders and have been disconnected from themselves? Because I witnessed firsthand the power that psychedelics have in connecting one to oneself and to everyone around you and to this world. So I kind of put it all into this little energy ball and started to search for some opportunities. I wanted to make a difference, and I thought, if I continue to work in this field where treatments were kind of stagnant and people weren't progressing, then how was I going to make that impact? So I found an incredible neurologist in Toronto who was doing this type of work. He was trying to see how different psychedelic therapies could help special populations within neurology. And after that, I just, networked and kept asking questions and kept trying to find the people. And I eventually found the people who were doing more of this type of work. And I joined a nonprofit called the Microdosing Collective, where I became their research advisor and started to lead their research efforts. And the piece about, relationships and intimacy, women's health, I found that there are such powerful plant medicines out there that can really be not alternatives, real options for people. And right now here in North America, they're considered alternative, but plant medicines are the original. And same kind of thing, had my own experience where I didn't want to go on another birth control pill or take another medication to help kind of navigate just being a woman. And someone suggested a really powerful blend of Chinese herbs that just changed my life. And I just feel like these personal experiences really did fuel my interest and my drive to try to make, a difference within this field. And so I started to, conduct research and advocate for women's health, connection, intimacy, how to use medicinal plants, how to stack them, how to weave them into your daily life to promote better health, better connection, better intimacy. And it's a topic that I love to speak about. And the ultimate goal is to just practice change, help healthcare professionals, learn and be educated about these options that they could offer their patients, especially when there's research backing it. I understand that physicians aren't going to start suggesting things that aren't backed by research. That's just the world that we live in. But
look
these
what just happened with MAPS,
Right.
That's a real tragedy, at least for the moment. In that the research that they were doing, they screwed up something. Maybe a small thing, but it was all they needed. It's all they needed to deny this, and now it's set this thing back. And hey, let's go back to. I'm really interested. Did you, in terms of people with brain injuries and so on? Did you actually go through a psychedelic therapeutic program with anyone that you could see what potentially happened or could happen?
I personally haven't supported anyone go through it yet, but I have spoken to many people who have, just by
treated. You mean treated or been
treated, or just people who have had brain injury and who have tried, Ibogaine, for example.
Oh, really?
So there was that study from Stanford that came out last year. It was 30 special ops veterans that went to Mexico with mild traumatic brain injury. And they did, I think it was a week-long protocol that involved Ibogaine, but that involved a lot of deep work in therapy because, with these psychedelics, we need that deep work in therapy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was life-changing for them, and it's been life-changing for many others who have suffered brain injuries.
Mm.
Because what's really fascinating about ibogaine is that it seems to also be kind of curative. It seems to promote not just neuroplasticity, but neurogenesis. And when you have a brain injury, there are a lot of images that I've seen where the dendrites, so like the branches on those neurons, are severed and broken. And
Wow.
in order to make neural connections, you need those neurons to have very long branches, right? Those are the highways of connection.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the result was something like after one dose, um, like symptoms of chronic disability had melted away, and they had given there's like these types of screeners and kind of questionnaires that you can give people to kind of assess their level of disability, and it was something really fascinating. I don't remember the exact numbers, but within a very short amount of time, the majority of these veterans weren't scoring as disabled anymore, which is
Wow.
very unique because nothing has had that kind of result at this point for traumatic brain injury. And forget just the medical piece, having these psychedelic experiences with the integration, the preparation, the integration, and all of that deep work, it helps people reconnect with themselves and come out of isolation and rebuild relationships. And if you suffer from TBI, you do live an isolated life, especially if it does deeply affect you. If you have migraines and light sensitivity and insomnia, pain, you end up isolating and withdrawing from life because life is hard to live. So giving people a second chance like that is just so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody, of course, any of these substances, uh, one does need to work with someone who has had experience at the very least
I believe
before
that.
you just decide, especially in every case, but ibogaine is particularly very powerful, used for primarily, as far as I knew, for addiction,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I know people who work with it, and their success rate is like extraordinary, like 3/4 of the something crazy,
Yeah.
Yeah, but isn't it screwed up that all MAPS was trying to do is get forget ibogaine, they're just trying to get MDMA approved. I mean,
Yeah.
come on,
I know. You know what shocked me? I remember listening to the that audit. Remember, like the audit that came first with all the different type of scientists and all the people that weren't quite qualified to be auditing the study. Someone said, "Why would we try to legalize this treatment when we have treatments that currently work?" And I thought that was shameful
So,
to say
yeah,
something like
really,
that because
such
the
bullshit.
suicide
Well,
rates are so high on a daily basis. How can you say that? So, lack
yeah,
of education, I think, is the common thread here. So we
yeah,
have a lot of work to do.
yeah. Of course, if you think of it back when this all completely erupted in the 60s with Leary and Alpert and all those people, and that, and into the 70s, he was what Nixon called Leary the most hated man or the most wanted man or the
Yes.
whatever in America. So just the fact, yes, this did get turned on, but turned down, this proposal to legalize MDMA. Yet at the same time, it actually came up into the public discussion. That's that's a positive thing. I know it's very difficult.
I think so. You said it. It was synthesized back in the 60s. It leaked out of the lab. It found its way onto dance floors, right? And I think that there's a lot of judgment and taboo around rave culture and the use of MDMA, right? But without that, piece of history where MDMA was experienced in that way by, I don't know, millions of people around the globe, I don't think we'd be even having this conversation about MDMA for PTSD. I think that MDMA, even though it led to its scheduling, the fact that it leaked out into the world and into the underground and black markets, I think that needed to happen because the collective experience of MDMA, for people to be able to experience it in that way and understand what it does for you, that's what made it so relevant. And that's what got it this far, because you have all these people who know exactly what it can do. People have experienced its power. It's one thing to read about it. It's one thing to hear about it.
Yep.
You experience it. It makes all the difference in the world. It motivated. Look at all these people that are part of the MAPS organization and the people who have donated to the cause and funded these research studies. Yeah. I'm ready to bet that the majority of those people have all experienced MDMA.
I would say that's correct. Here's a funny story. When I was in India with Ram Dass and Neem Karoli Baba, I was writing to my father, my brother, and I were there, and we were saying, you cannot believe what's happened to us here in the Himalayas. So he ended up coming, which, it was a problem for me because we didn't exactly have a phenomenal relationship growing up because I was, terrible. And we're terribly reacting to all of that societal stuff. So he came. It's a long story, which everybody, I recommend this book, Love Everyone, which is the story of the Westerners who went over to India at that time and what happened. And he came and he met Neem Karoli Baba, who immediately told me to give him acid, by the way. That's a whole other story. But I did. He was he was PTSD'd out. He was a World War II pilot. Okay. Oh, wow. Everyone died except him and one other person in a squadron. That kind of, wow. No more dreams, no more remembering dreams. Thought he wasn't afraid to die because he didn't, right? I mean, deluded, big time. And he came there and acid opened the door. Maharaji, we used to call him. Say, did you give him the medicine? Yeah, I gave him some aspirin. He had a cold. No, the yogi medicine that Ram Dass gave me. I went acid and boom, that's what happened. When he came back to America, to Canada, right, to Montreal, we actually had a farm out. You know where Sutton is, outside of Montreal? So that's where we were, just off the Vermont border. And he put up a teepee. He and his new wife were doing, MDA or MDMA on a weekly basis so he could get back to that feeling of the complete interconnection of all things. He couldn't leave it. So I was looking at him going, holy shit, what happened here? This is my father. I'm not even doing that kind of extensive MDMA use. Anyhow, just reminded me of when you said how many people have experienced it over these years through the rave scene and through whatever, and that's part of how the fabric of everything is changing because of that direct experience, as you just said.
Your story is one that I've heard, many times because our parents and our grandparents lived through wars and displacement and immigration, and there's trauma there that needs to be healed. And it's a theme through time, right? Maybe we're not experiencing World War II, but we're experiencing our own wars and devastation. And there are people who are caught right in the middle of it now in this modern time. It's not something of the past. And there have been studies and conversations that I've been a part of that have spoken about MDMA therapy for PTSD for people in war-torn countries currently. How that could help them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is your father still?
No, he left about 10 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, but the rest of my life was completely changed. All my family met Neem Karoli Baba, except my mother, who met an equally incredible saint, Siddhima. Yeah, my whole family. I mean, we used to be treated in India like, whoa, because they never saw anything, because it was usually very fragmented families and children that they met. We were young. We were in our early 20s. And so, yeah, the rest of that my family was glued together by this being, period. It's just immense karmic grace.
Wow.
Yeah. So, one of the things that we are going to be doing, and the work that you've done, you've spoken to it already, but we can go a little bit further. So, of course, all this great work that MAPS has been doing, and the research that they've been doing, and the efforts that they've made in relating these substances to therapeutic values in many different ways: death and dying, addiction, PTSD. The one thing that Ram Dass represented was a perspective about use. I mean, nobody took as many acid trips as he did. I mean, just insane. I mean, we'd be up in the Himalayas when I first went to India, and he was there. We were there together, just a small group doing a meditation practice. But at night, he'd regale us with these stories of what he and Leary did. I mean, it was insane. Okay, let's go into a room for a week with as much psychoactive comp and just keep taking, see what happened. Who would do that? Never mind flying his plane on acid. So we heard, all of this stuff, but what happened to him, which to me represents a greater, yes, all of this therapy, as I say, what MAPS represents is absolutely necessary, phenomenal, and God bless. We support it in whatever way we can. But there's a greater population of people that are using these entheogens to find out more about who they really are in one way or another. And what happened to Ram Dass was he realized he kept coming down. And he's like, okay, somebody must know how to not come down. He called it someone must have a map of consciousness. So he ended up in India. And of course, the rest is history. Be Here Now, being the emanation of all of that to this huge, huge audience. But what we feel isn't quite represented the way that he represented. I mean, he had a unique view, which was the ineffable experience that one has in their consciousness through a psychedelic event. What's next in terms of integration? What's next in terms of outcome? And how do you utilize all of these other practices, which get you to the same place? Maybe not the way we like it, boom, you're there. Mm-hmm. But how do we integrate this into daily life? So we're putting we're going to be doing a summit, actually, and we're working on this we have a Ram Dass fellowship called the Explorers Club, and we bring people in to talk. People, we'll probably get you an invite. It'd be great to have you speak to the audience. But also a summit that we're going to actually hold in Oakland, California, next spring. This is the first time I've even mentioned it because it seems like it is going to happen, where we'll spend 3 days investigating science, spirituality, and psychedelic insight. and speaking to that and the convergence of those things, which I think is very much part of the work that you do. Maybe you can talk about that a little bit?
Yes. Oh, you said so much that I want to talk about. I'll first say that my work tends to be focused on the above ground, on the science, on the medicine, but that's just the work that I guess that I contribute to. My mission is to bridge science and spirit. That's my ultimate mission. I say normalize talking about past lives with your fellow neurologist. It's bringing these types of conversations into the medical meeting, the scientific meeting, explaining to providers that have practiced in this very focused way.
Narrow.
Symptom, yeah, narrow is the word that I wanted to use. To treat the whole human. Why only treat the symptom when you have an entire human being here? And coming to the realization that anybody who has any kind of health challenge will have their mental health affected. There is an impact. And so just treating that illness or that symptom is not enough. You need to heal the mind. You need to heal the soul. They're all interconnected. And there's no reason why medical science, especially when we talk about psychedelics, can't address all of that. And so for me, like that's the ultimate goal. If I can use research as a tool to achieve this, then I've succeeded, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. And when you talked about the power of integration, I think the whole point of a psychedelic experience is to change your life. Doesn't mean that it has to be a massive change, doesn't mean you have to crack your entire world open, but it is about change. And so whether you are engaging in small, modest doses, or whether you're doing it every single day in a room over and over and over again.
Don't necessarily try that, by the way.
No,
that's a story. It's real, but it's from a very special group of people.
Yeah. It's about change because why else are you doing it? I'm not saying that you're trying to change who you are, but coming out of a psychedelic experience, you are changed, even if it is on a micro level.
Your perspective changes on a major level.
Yes, definitely.
Absolutely.
There are insights everywhere. There is something to integrate. There is an intention every single time, even on the dance floor. I always say that. Even if you are participating more recreationally and you just want to have a good time and you just want to relax, there's something to prepare for. There's something to integrate every single time. And I think overall, everybody is always seeking betterment. Be a better person, be a kinder person, have more compassion, understand yourself, accept yourself, love yourself so that you could understand, accept, and love others. And this is, I guess, the message. And if I can communicate the message through research papers, then great. If I can communicate it on a stage at a conference or in a workshop, great. I recently started a consultancy that does both strategy and science research solutions for initiatives in the plant medicine and psychedelic space. So from nonprofits to clinics, when I advise, I try to infuse a lot of this message. And I think that that's the only way that you can be integrous in this type of work.
Two of the biggest outcome, as you were just mentioning, and I concur, which is really your perspective does change.
Does.
Now, that's not just psychedelics, that's meditation, that's yoga, That's mindfulness. It's chanting, whatever. There's so many different practices that would lead to the same place. And, psychedelics, there's a way in which it's certainly a shortcut, just in terms of the intensity over a short period of time. But perspective, that change is not a momentary thing. Once that happens, what happened to me it's the best way I could understand in terms of a broader discussion to have is starting with yourself. And what I had was an opening through Ram Dass when I met him as a teacher, was an opening to a doorway to trusting my own intuitive center. Right? And people can call it spirit, soul, all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. But trusting is that intuitive center is something I think everybody can relate with, because everybody's had that experience at one time or another where you just know something is right. Turn in this direction. Right?
Or the opposite.
Eh?
Or the opposite. Something is wrong.
Or something is wrong. Yeah, no, right. Yeah, absolutely.
Discernment.
Absolutely. Yeah. Discernment is crucially important. But once that happens, and there are ways to support that, and I think that's very necessary. On a day-to-day practice, on a day-to-day basis is absolutely, in my mind, necessary in order to not fall back into believing that story that you've been telling yourself about who you think you are, believing those thoughts, running from dark thoughts, etc., etc. So there has to be a support system in all of this. And anyhow, that's what we're very much going to represent and are doing so now, in the work we're doing around psychedelics and integration.
Yeah, because so when we're children, we're sponges. We hear this expression all the time. And I like to compare our minds, I guess, to a big open window when we're children, and everything can come through the window. What we see, what we experience, and that involves, like languages and just learning in school and the different influences from your family, from your parents, from your relationships, everything that you observe, it imprints on you. And then as we get older, the window kind of closes and it gets harder to make changes to things that have essentially become ingrained in us. And psychedelics reopen the window. For a fleeting moment, the window is wide open, but you are vulnerable. Because just as you can have powerful insights and positive impact, you can also have the opposite, right? And if you're not adequately supported with integration, with preparation, if you're not guided, then the opposite can happen. You can be negatively impacted. You can be traumatized, re-traumatized. You can have a change in perspective that doesn't lead to goodness. And it could be very harmful. And that's why I do think that having someone guide you, having someone with you who can help shape those moments, that fleeting moment, and make it as positively impactful for you as possible is key. And then the other thing is, people in general don't want to sit with the discomfort. We tend to run away from the feelings that make us feel nervous.
That's a wild understatement, yes.
Oh, we don't like it, and so we do things to distract ourselves from those feelings. And lessons are often uncomfortable to learn, but something about psychedelics makes us more open to the lesson, or makes the lesson land in a way that we're willing to listen to it, accept it, integrate it. We aren't fearful of the negative feelings. We realize that those negative feelings or those uncomfortable feelings are the, roots to growth. And for me, I guess my experience, my most impactful experiences were those that made me more aware of my habits that weren't necessarily serving me. And I was able to just confront it and accept it rather than deny it and flee from it or avoid it. Um, yeah, uh, I always thought I was self-aware. And then I tried some psychedelics and realized that I wasn't always that self-aware, and that, awareness is definitely needed. Awareness, I think, is just a key to connection too with yourself, just knowing yourself and understanding yourself. And it also leads to more acceptance of other people and more compassion for who other people are. And you realize, you know, how to exist with other people that are different from you, people that you might want to judge at first, but you realize that you shouldn't. So a lot of lessons learned.
Certainly, awareness is key.
Yeah.
Absolutely key. It's what mindfulness is all about.
Yeah.
I did an audio book with a friend of mine, Duncan Trussell, who does a major podcast, and it was the movie of me to the movie of we. And, you just talked about, oh, gee, I wasn't quite aware until I took a psychedelic of just, some of these habits and neurotic tendencies, I would imagine as well. And that's the first golden rule step: awareness of your selfish motivations, of it all.
Do you know that book, Awareness, by Anthony DeMello?
Yeah, I think I do.
He's a priest, I believe.
Yeah.
And he talks about exactly what you just said.
Really?
Waking up to, I guess, waking up to all of the human characteristics that make us less present, and how to be more present, and how not to be motivated, like you said, by our own selfish reasons. He even goes as far, he goes a little far sometimes with some things, talks about love and how being loved and loving is selfish. But for me, that was like a bit of a line in the sand. I was like,
well, when love's transactional, of course, all of that's possible, right? And unfortunately, in relationships, that's a primary thing to transform, is that you do for me, I'll do for you, and then we'll be okay. You love me if I love you. Yeah.
Right. And
I've got it. Anthony DeMello.
Yeah,
I'm not, I know the name, and I'm going to investigate, and maybe we'll do a podcast with something like that. Oh boy. What was I going to say?
Yeah, sorry, I jumped in on your thought.
No, that's okay. Actually, we're getting close here. So what I did want to know, and we haven't talked about it at all, is music.
Oh,
so suddenly, amidst everything you're talking about, what you're working with, brain injured people and psychedelics and, neuropharmacology and all of that, suddenly there you are with a record label in Los Angeles, right?
Yes.
How did that happen?
Oh, it starts with a past life.
Oh, like?
All right. I'm going to take you back to the origin story, but I'm going to make it brief. When I was 9, this kid moved to my neighborhood from France, and we lived around a park. He lived on one side of the park, I lived on the other side of the park, and all the kids used to play together in this park. He moved, to my neighborhood, and we were instant friends from the age of 9 until now. Still my best friends, but not just my best friend. He makes me believe that we also knew each other in a past life. There's a very soulmate type of connection with this friend of mine. And, he moved away from Montreal, early 20s, moved to the Caribbean. I moved from Montreal to LA, my late 20s. And although, throughout all those years, and still now to this day, we don't live in the same place. We stayed very much connected. And in the Caribbean, he had started, playing music, producing music, DJing. He started throwing these parties. He hosted his first party called Public Secret on a beach called Public in St. Bart's, and it was a secret party. So the genius name came from there. And it grew into a little bit of a movement. It had like its own like cart at Carnival. And then he later moved to Mexico and brought it there. And I went to Mexico to visit him one day, and I witnessed him playing music. And it wasn't just because it was my best friend. It wasn't just because it was Mexico. It was just something about what he had created, the type of music he was playing, seeing how passionate he was, the group of people that he brought together, the energy in the space. I was inspired. I was just really inspired. And I told him, you need to come do this in Los Angeles. We need to figure out how to make this into something. We both share passion for music. We both connect over music. We always have. And we brought it to LA. We started throwing events. It just started like that. And people were really resonating with it. The type of music was more global groove, electronic music, Afro electronic music. And I felt that within our community in LA, people weren't really going out to dance to that kind of music. It tended to be a little bit more like house and techno and
EDM. Yeah.
Yeah, and this had a little bit more of like a global culture with, like Latin influence and African influence and Middle Eastern influence.
Cool.
And it was special. And it wasn't anything that was on my radar. It wasn't in my plans to start doing this, but I really saw that I enjoyed bringing people together to connect. And I saw, what music does for people. It's psychedelic. It expands your mind. It's a beautiful thing to witness. And I felt so inspired by this entire thing that we just decided to kind of keep it going. And with some time, we realized that the people we were working with were so talented, but they didn't have any representation. So we said, why don't we try to do kind of like artist development and use our networks to find them opportunities. And then before we knew it, we had a music label and 9 artists or 10 artists.
Really?
Yeah, it's
What's the label called?
It's called Public Secret.
Public Secret
Records. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you'll send me over links and stuff for everything that we're talking about, so we can share it on the show notes. Oh, that's so cool.
It helped me step into something that I think was always there, but I didn't quite know how to grab it or hone it.
It's kind of crazy. I went to LA, and with my friend Krishna Das, we started a label in LA doing world music, jazz, world pop, and all of that for about 20 odd years. And here you're doing that. Just you know what? In my family, 2 brothers and a sister. Your family, 2 brothers and a sister.
Wow. Where are you in this? Are you eldest, youngest?
I'm eldest, yeah.
I'm eldest.
Oh, really? That's fun. Oh, God. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Do you know that? So we have a label under the Love Serve Remember Foundation. It's called Soul Land Music. So it's us getting together with different artists and them using various phrases and talks and meditations from Ram Dass. And I mean, it's wild. It's just how it's expanded over these years. It's now, I don't know, 4 years or something. And one of them, I'm just thinking of him because I'm going to see him this weekend. I haven't seen him in a while. Is Justin Beretta. Do you know who Justin is? Justin had Glitch Mob, which was a big electronica band.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So he started now he's much more doing the kinds of things that you're speaking to, where the music as representing the entire spectrum of who we are, of human experience, basically, including the psychedelic, obviously. And yeah, he just did a great, much more of a dance thing. Most of the stuff that we've been doing with people has been more meditative, except East Forest. We did a wonderful thing with him when he used an interview he did with Ram Dass. But this is our first foray into, some powerful dance music that he used. It's coming out soon, folks. We'll let you know when.
Awesome.
So yeah, before we leave, though, I want to say that everything we're talking about, and we mentioned outcomes of all of the work that people do on themselves through whatever practices, and we talked a lot about psychedelics because of the power of psychedelics. And I just wanted to share one thing from the Dalai Lama, which I feel is really, this is the outcome that we should all aspire to. And it's not like it hasn't been mentioned here, but here it is. Compassion is developed through training, through reasoning. The Dalai Lama spoke about his favorite topic. Education has a very important role in cultivating it. But development of brain alone is not certain to bring inner peace or happiness. He is one Tibetan monk I knew well. He was a member of my monastery and very close to me. Since 1959, he spent 18 years in the Chinese Gulag. In the early 80s, because of new situations, some Tibetans did come to India. This monk came, and we met, and we talked casually. Few occasions I met him. Then one day he mentioned during the 18 years in the Gulag, he experienced some danger. Yeah, just being there. I asked him, what danger? He replied, this is the key, danger of losing compassion toward the Chinese. That was the danger, not his physical well-being. This person, not much educated, His Holiness said, not a good scholar, not a very good practitioner. He considered compassion towards his so-called enemy very important, and that's what he practiced. He kept a compassionate attitude toward the persons who created the problems for him. The result? His mind very calm, very peaceful. Compassion gave him happiness. To me, that's what our aspiration needs to be in all of it. And certainly when we present around the merging of science, spirituality, and psychedelic insight, that's top of the list. So I just thought I'd share that with you.
I'm glad you did. I echo that sentiment wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I know. It's in your work, and that's why it triggered me as well. So thanks a lot, Stephanie.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I don't meet people on the podcast from Montreal very often, maybe never. Although
we both chose to settle down in the 805. I'm in Ventura, by the way, now. So I'm not far.
You're in Ventura?
Yeah, I live in Ventura.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, for God's sake. Oh, you're right here. All right. Well, that's great. We can meet up.
Yep.
So everybody, you can go to BeHereNowNetwork.com/mindrolling. You'll find the show notes, and Stephanie's going to give us a bunch of links that we'll have the producer put in there, and you'll be able to catch up with her work, which is expansive, and find out, get into the music that she's making. That sounds great too.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll get together again. And meanwhile, everybody, will see you next time. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you,
Stephanie.
Thank you.